from Section 204. Heavy Hockey Podcast with Michael and guests. Heavy hockey isn't dead. It's just getting started.
Welcome to the Heavy Hockey Podcast. I'm SPR, also known as the Oil Knight on Twitter. I'm filling in for Mike tonight, who's in Scotland, probably eating a lot of hummus and tossing a few logs and maybe doing a little face painting as well. With me is a special guest. His name is Alex. His Twitter handle is @AlClembee, ALCLEMBEE. Alex, what's happening, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I haven't done one of these in a while, so I might be a little bit rusty, so bear with me. For those who know me, I did have a podcast there, Late Night with You All Night. I kind of got out of that business, and I'm a little more focused on scouting and prospect stuff now, but Mike asked me for a favor, and he's a good friend, so willingly obliged. Checks in the mail, right, Mike?
Yep.
Anyways, we're going to talk some Oilers hockey tonight. It's been a while. There's a lot has happened in the last couple of weeks. The regular season's over, and the Stanley Cup Finals are almost done. But we got a draft coming up, and we've had a lot of moves in Edmonton. So let's get right at it. First of all, what do you want to talk about first? I guess we should probably... Well, today, as we're recording, Dave Tippett was hired as the coach of the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe we should touch on that first.
Yeah.
It's a three-year deal for reasonable money, under $3 million a year. What do you think, Alex? What are your thoughts on Dave Tippett as the new head coach of the Oilers?
Much like when the Holland was announced and reported and pretty much confirmed weeks before it was announced, I don't like it. It might grow on me, so I'm not going to be completely against it, but based on what I've heard from people, Coyotes fans and other people on the internet, this is a guy who is not really great at developing or not great at playing young talent in the league. He has a certain style that some players struggle with. But that being said, he is an experienced coach. He has made the playoffs numerous times. Hell, he pulled out a conference finals appearance out of his ass with Arizona in 2012. So, he has that going for him. But I don't know. Like I said, initially, I've been against this. And anyone who wants to verify this can check my Twitter handle. I am vehemently against this. But the more I've sat on it, the more I've thought about it. It's the right decision. And you know what? 3 years, that gives Mr. Woodcroft some time to continue to be well with Bakersfield. And who knows, maybe he might be the next coach in a year or two.
Yeah, that's interesting. Although I thought there were rumors that he was considering going to LA. Have those been squashed, or is that still kind of up in the air?
As far as I know, that's still up in the air. And to be honest, it absolutely wouldn't surprise me considering his relationship with Todd in the past. But if I was Edmonton, I would say, look, you had an amazing season with Bakersfield, easily the best in their entire history. You made us to the second round. We have a bunch of young players who are coming up. The players are familiar with you. They like you. They respect you. They trust you. Stay in, continue to help us out, and you can get a head coaching job of your own with us. Yeah,
I would think he would. It would be a quicker path. Ultimately, I assume his goal is to be a head coach in the NHL. So if the quicker path in my eyes would be stay where you are, be a successful AHL coach. You had a great first season. Continue that, and then you're one of the hot commodities, as opposed to going to being an assistant coach under McLellan, where, he's been fired now. McLellan's been fired a couple of times, which means Woodcroft's been fired a couple of times. It hasn't necessarily so much worked out for him being with Todd. So, maybe him being his own man and being his own coach, hopefully he decides to stick it out and stay in Edmonton or stay in Bakersfield. Because like you said, he's got a good thing going, and it's been... For so long, the Oilers have struggled developing prospects and the AHL system has always been a tire fire. So, even if he wants more money, just give it to him. Keep him there. Get some stability there, for God's sakes.
Well, and again, unrelated news, because we are talking about the Oilers, but the Leafs extended Sheldon Keefe for the Marlies as well, right? And maybe they're grooming him for an NHL position, when they fire Mike Babcock next year after another first-round exit.
Yeah, wasn't that nice?
I don't get this. I don't want to talk about the Leafs at all, but I do have one question.
But
Game 7 in Boston, you're down by 2 goals. How are you not playing Austin Matthews with Marner and Tavares on one line for 90% of that third period?
I almost feel like Babcock wants to get fired, or he's just trying to piss off Dubas intentionally. I'm going to do it my way, and I don't care. I think there's a serious rift between him and Babcock and Matthews. I really do. And yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense why you would do that, but he's stubborn, right?
Mind you, this is the same guy who also criticized McLeod for playing McDavid 25 minutes a night. So I guess you really shouldn't be surprised. But like I said, I don't want to talk about the Leafs. I just wanted to point out that Keefe got an extension, which is sending the message to him that Toronto trusts him. They like what he's doing down in Bakersfield with the Marlies. And they don't know, he doesn't know what it's going to do, but they like him. So I would say to Edmonton, keep Woodcroft, right?
Yeah.
We've had a carousel of coaches in Edmonton. We don't need a carousel of coaches in Bakersfield.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my thoughts on Tippett, I mean, I sometimes you forget, we all have recency bias, I think. And sometimes we forget what he did previously, or anybody did in previous roles. I'm talking like before his most recent one. So in Arizona, I mean, obviously he didn't have a lot of talent to work with, and he kind of switched to a more defensive structure. And he talked about that in his press conference today. There wasn't a lot there, so you kind of make the most of the hand you're dealt with. But he pointed out that he was when he left Dallas, I mean, they were a highly offensive team, and he was regarded. Or I guess when he came, I guess he was an assistant coach in LA, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he ran the power play in that in LA. When he came to Dallas, he was viewed as an offensive coach. And Dallas did put up a lot of points in his tenure there. And then it kind of switched, like you said, when he went to Phoenix, and then they switched to Arizona. So, I mean, he has had success in the past with guys like Modano and high-end players, and he's also had success with teams that weren't as good. So he's adaptable, I think, if nothing else. I'm still not convinced he's the right man for the job, but I'm not convinced he isn't either. Yeah,
and it's a good thing that, like I said, it's a 3-year. As we pointed out, 3-year deal. So it's 3 years. It's not. That's not too long of a time. It's not. What did we give McLeod? 5 years?
Yep.
5 years. So it's a 3-year thing. I view it as a stopgap for grooming Woodcroft to a head coaching position. But I think that will depend on how Bakersfield does during these 3 years. The year they had is an excellent start. Don't get me wrong. But, bringing back his time in Arizona, as much as I acknowledge I don't think he was the right coach for Arizona, they also had a ton of problems down there. They were heavy with veterans. They were going through, a owner carousel almost what it seemed every year. So he didn't really have a lot to work with in Arizona as much as he does here in Edmonton. So, like I said, the more I think about it, like in the, yesterday and the day before and ever since it was reported, I was mostly pissed off, not because of the hire, but, I guess what I'm really ticked off about is what the management has said versus what they've done. At the end of the year, what they said they were going to do is they were going to do a full evaluation. They were going to interview everyone. And then as soon as Ken Holland comes available, hey, you know what? You're hired, right? It's what they did with Chiarelli, right? As soon as Chiarelli was available, they didn't interview him. They're like, oh, you're our new guy because you had success in Boston, right? I think that's what really pissed me off more about the hire. About it is not who they hired, but the way they went about it, which is as soon as the guy is available, you are hired. We're not even going to bother interviewing you. But from what the press conference was, it does sound like they did their due diligence. I'm just not buying it.
Well, yeah, and that kind of leads us to our next hire when we talk about Ken Holland. And I agree with you because Nicholson even admitted way back he was bringing in he was talking to certain executives or whatever, or other general managers kind of picking their brain. And Ken Holland was a guy that he was talking to. They can say, oh, we just talked to him a couple weeks ago and asked him about the job, asked for permission when he was available. But they were still talking to him unofficially or in a different capacity way, way before that. And a good indicator of that was even when Nicholson came out in his press conference or whatever, and he mentioned how the Oilers plan to over-ripen their prospects moving forward. And that's always been a catchphrase for Holland in the past. That's something that he mentions many times. and even to the point now where he says he doesn't overwrite prospects, but that's just a term that he uses a lot. So I kind of recognized that lingo right from the beginning, and that was a couple of months ago. So I knew they were at least chatting, right? And I'm sure the topic came up, the topic of discussion. Hey, if this happens, then let me know. So I agree with you. I do think kind of Ken Holland was his guy right from the beginning. They may have created an illusion of, hiring some other guys and interviewing them or interviewing some guys and thinking, okay, well, these guys might fill in as potentials. And then, putting out press releases. Well, we've talked to this many people, but in the back of their minds, Holland was their number one choice. He was their guy right from the beginning. It was just a matter of time until Detroit sorted out their own front office. As soon as Yzerman got hired, then they knew they were going that route. But I think they kind of knew right from the beginning. Taking
that back further, I wonder if Holland was Nicholson's guy ever since Yzerman stepped down from GM in Tampa. Like, you look at how early that happened. What was it, like a couple weeks before the season began or something like that? I wonder, because everyone knew that Yzerman was going to go back to Detroit.
Oh yeah, it was a guarantee.
It was absolutely guaranteed. You could put $1 million on Vegas for it, and it would have worked for you. Yeah. I'm wondering if that's when Nicholson made that decision. That being said, I still had a question. I asked this a few weeks ago after the Holland hire was announced. Wasn't he also promoted to a senior position in Detroit, or did that not happen? Because I remember when they announced the Yzerman as the GM, he was supposed to be like in a senior position.
Yeah,
and then
he was. He was, and they announced an extension. I watched the press conference live.
So I guess that's no longer void, or is he working for both organizations?
Yeah, I guess that's off the table now.
Can you imagine? I'm a double agent. I guess we should talk about our thoughts on it. So, what did you think about it
with Holland? Holland hiring?
Yeah.
I mean, as I've mentioned a few times, a lot of people probably know by now, I've always had a soft spot for Detroit. Mm-hmm. I live in London, Ontario. The Leafs and Detroit are about the same distance from here. I hate the Leafs, but I have a lot of family members that have been Detroit Red Wings fans, and they're such a classy organization when Mike Ilitch was running that, and with Yzerman, I still say my favorite teams of all time, other non-Oilers teams, were the was it 95, 96, the Shanahan, Yzerman, McCarty, Lidstrom. Those Red Wings, God, they were awesome. I loved watching them. Yeah. They stuck up for each other and they beat up Claude Lemieux there. And I love those teams. And I always had respect for Holland. And he is such a class guy and he's a loyal guy. But I did worry. I did have concerns. The last few years he really struggled with the cap. He's almost loyal to a fault where he overpaid for his own guys. He extended them too long and whatever. So. Looking at the Oilers situation, they're in cap trouble and they've handed out some bad contracts. Now you're bringing in a general manager that's had a recent history of struggling with the cap and handing out bad contracts. It didn't necessarily seem like a fit. That being said, I mean, the guy's been around long enough. He's a knowledgeable guy. You hope you kind of give him the benefit of the doubt that he kind of learned from his mistakes and he can correct it. So, I mean, Ken, I've always had a huge appreciation for Ken Holland, and I respect him. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. But I mean, I'm still a little bit skeptical. And, I think all Oilers fans should be, especially a lot of us were Chiarelli supporters, and he'd won a cup in Boston.
Yeah.
And he struggled with the cap, and he kind of left them in a bad situation. Well, it's almost deja vu. It's kind of the same idea, right?
Yeah.
Holland's coming in the same situation, leaving the same situation. So I'll say I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. As I said, when I first heard about the rumors, I was pissed right off, mostly because of what they were saying, what they said they were going to do versus what they actually did. But a lot of that also had to stem with the fact that, again, like you said, he handed out some bad contracts in Detroit his last few years. And I think a lot of that stemmed from his desire to keep Detroit making their playoffs and stuff like that. Their 25-year playoff appearance streak ended the same year the Oilers broke their 10-year playoff drought, right? So I think a lot of his overpaying stuff was a result of trying to keep that streak alive. That being said, Detroit for years has been the gold standard on how to really run an organization. Even when they weren't winning cups, even when they weren't, going deep in the playoffs, they were, the best managed team in the league for, decades. Like if you wanted to emulate how to run an organization, you looked at the Detroit Red Wings. That being said, I think he did a really good job of piping up their prospect development. You look at who do they pick again? Philip Zadina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they could have easily, tried to push him to the NHL. Clearly he wasn't ready. They put him back down into, what was it, the OHL or the AHL?
He went to the AHL.
Okay, yeah. So he played for the, I'm so bad at AHL teams. Is it
Grand Rapids?
Yeah, I think it's the Griffins, right? The Grand Rapids Griffins. Anyway, he put them down, Zadina down there. They also have Svechnikov, right? Evgeny Svechnikov? Yeah,
they got a lot of good prospects. Like not even just Zadina. Like they drafted Joe Veleno, who lit up the queue, and they got a lot of good guys.
Yeah. So I mean, he's been keeping their prospects down low, which is going to help us, especially since I think Bouchard could probably use another year of seasoning. Although I don't think he's going to last long if the playoffs are any indication. Yamamoto, McLeod's going to be down there. Although I think Benson or McLeod are probably going to push for an NHL job this year. I'm hoping it's Benson, but I'll see what we'll have to see what happens in training camp and stuff like that. Thank God he didn't really get injured this year like he was in the previous year, so we were able to finally see what we got out of him. So like I said, at first I wasn't really too happy about it, but I'm not going to deny it. The work that has happened since then, the turnover rate in management that has happened since then, has put a smile on my face, and I am a little bit more happy about the hiring.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of a big point, and that's a good point too. That's kind of a big thing with Oilers fans. I mean, whoever got hired, they wanted to also see a lot of firings come with it and upper management. And to date now, we've got what? We've got McTavish is out. We got Sutter's out. He was the director of what? Pro scouting? Yeah,
he was the pro scout. The media guy is out, although I don't know how that affects the team badly, but whatever.
Yeah.
that one didn't make sense.
Yeah, and huge news today, Paul Coffey's out. I don't even know what the fuck he did, but he's gone.
Skills coach, whatever that means, because I didn't see any skill on our ice this past season.
Yeah, he could make a mean martini.
No offense to Paul, because he is a great player, but I don't know. I don't know what skills coach does. If it's that useless of a title, put me in that position, please, and thank you in advance.
Yeah, I feel like he was almost like Gretzky's chaperone.
Yeah.
After the games, he helped them in the limo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we're saying, pleasant turnover rate in management. This is something that we didn't think would have happened a few years ago unless it was absolutely necessary, i.e. Mac T being fired as the head coach and then the GM. There are still some people in there that I think that they should probably think about moving off or parting ways with, but for right now, I'm happy with things are going in terms of the management. So that area is good for me right now.
How is Bill Scott still employed? He had 2 roles last year, 2 titles: assistant general manager or assistant. No, he was the he was the assistant to the president of hockey operations. So he was the assistant to Chiarelli.
Yep.
And Chiarelli got fired, so shouldn't his assistant be fired too? But he had a second title, and his second title was the director of salary cap management,
and
the salary cap management was a fucking disaster.
Yeah. One word.
So how is he still there?
One word: nepotism. Has to be.
I think 2 words. Lucky socks. He wore his lucky socks in the draft, and the Oilers got McDavid, and he's been riding that ever since. He's wearing those socks every day.
Yeah, that's probably no. Well, if you think about it, lucky socks. We get McDavid, then Puljujärvi falls to us, and then we get Bouchard. Right?
Yeah, but he wasn't. I don't know if he was at. I don't know if he was at those drafts. Maybe he was.
I don't know. If he joined Chiarelli after the McDavid draft, it would have been the Puljujärvi draft he's been a part of.
Yeah.
I know that's when Keith Gretzky came over. It was the year after the McDavid draft. So, just before the 16-17 season, it was announced that Keith Gretzky was going to be the assistant GM to Peter.
Okay.
And then that season, we all thought the problems had gone away, that we were free from this misery of ours, and then we're back right in it.
Yeah. So what's going to happen to Keith Gretzky? Do you think he sticks around? Do you want him to stick around, or?
I think he sticks around because of who he's related to. Again, nepotism.
Yeah.
I don't know what his position is going to be. I don't know if he's still going to be serving as assistant to Ken. I don't know if he's going to be overseeing another aspect. Maybe he'll take Mac T's old job, which apparently was overseeing Bakersfield.
Yeah, that was always weird to me because he was always on the road. You always see him somewhere in OHL or CHL games, and yet he was in charge of Bakersfield.
I don't know. I really hate talking about Toronto because it really seems that they've really turned a corner, and it's hard to ignore.
Well, and plus, you're fans that don't know, you live in Toronto. You're an Oilers fan living in Toronto.
Yeah, right? I live in Aurora, but
Oh, okay.
90 minutes north of Toronto, so I can easily get down to a Leafs game if I have to. Actually, I'm not going to lie, I did go to a Leafs game, Game 2 versus Boston. Thank God Toronto lost.
Yeah.
I like what Toronto did in terms of dealing with Kyle Dubas, in terms of prepping him for their GM role. Because, again, like with Holland, I think that he was their guy for quite some time before Lamoriello stepped down. But what they did with him was that they had him as the GM of the Marlies while also serving as the assistant GM to the Leafs. So it would make sense that, that would be a thing. And, it also makes more sense because as far as I know, Toronto is still the only team that has its AHL affiliate in the same city as its NHL club. Every other team, as far as I know, has them in a different city. Whereas Toronto, because of how expensive and how vast the city is, it's like 10 minutes away from the Air Canada Center, right? So it was very easy to have him both be the GM of the Marlies while also still serving as the assistant GM to the Maple Leafs because it's a 10-minute drive.
Right. What about is the Flyers? Do they still? Isn't it? They have the Lee Valley Phantoms. They used to be the Philadelphia Phantoms.
Yeah. As far as I know, I don't know if it's still true, but I know that the Leafs were the first NHL organization to have its AHL club be in the same city as the NHL club. And again, if anyone on this who's listening to this podcast knows Toronto, that's entirely possible considering the fact that they have the Raptors, the Argonauts, and the TFC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that whole market.
Oh, well. It's great if you're it's great if you're like me whose NHL loyalty shifted, but he kept his NBA loyalties the same. So I guess I can touch base on this. Good luck to the Raptors in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shock. They were down 2-0, and it didn't look good at all. And then somehow, I don't really follow basketball at all, but I did watch a little bit of Game 3, and they looked like they were going to blow it. They tried to give away the game, but they still pulled it out. And then all of a sudden they just fucking rolled because of Drake. It was all Drake, baby.
Yeah, well, you want to talk about fans who are getting a little too into it. I think Drake is one of them.
Yeah. Talk about an attention whore. Holy. Hey, everybody, look at me.
Yeah. I'm rubbing the head coach's shoulders.
Yeah. Well, I know Philly had the Phantoms.
Yeah.
Philadelphia Phantoms. They had Flyers and they owned kind of all that. And I think that was before the Marlies. I think they were still St. John's Marlies back then. But yeah, point taken for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what about let's just talk on. We're going to talk about some draft stuff too, and some trades or who we think we might like to see Ken Holland target and move out and bring in. But just real quickly, what's your have you been watching much of the playoffs?
Yeah, I've been. Whenever I wasn't working, I was able to grab a game or two. I got to say, I was very surprised at how the first round turned out. But I caught game 1 of the Cup final last night, and it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, isn't it funny? All the smack, all the shit talk Flames fans made, or we're doing, and then they get into the playoffs and they win one game, then they just fold the 10.
You know what? That 3-1 loss to the Oilers, it ruined them. That is the game that destroyed the Flames.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if you're right, but hey, I'll go with that. That sounds good to me.
Although some Oilers fans will argue that victory cost us the 2nd overall pick, so pick your battles.
Yeah. Well, and isn't it funny? And obviously, I'm a big junior hockey guy.
Yeah.
And the draft pick that Calgary lost to the Islanders for for Hamonic. The first round pick turned out to be Noah Dobson.
Yep.
And Noah Dobson is now back-to-back Memorial Cup champion and MVP. And I mean, the kid just looks dynamite in his own right. And Calgary goes out first round again, and they don't have they didn't have their first round pick last year. I don't even know if they have it this year.
Yeah, I remember making that joke on the draft podcast we did when we did on draft day when we were talking about Bouchard. I made that joke about how they joked us about trading Taylor Hall for Adam Larson. Well, they just traded their first rounder pick or they just traded Noah Dobson for Travis Hamonic. So I still got a good chuckle out of that. But yeah, seeing Calgary just fold like a cheap tent in the playoffs was absolutely glorious. They had no answer for Colorado's depth. They had zero answer for Nathan McKinnon. And, their fans constantly talk to us about, or like to point and laugh and say, oh, you guys are paying Lucic $6 million a year to do jack shit. Well, I think you guys could have used Lucic to protect Johnny and Monty because they weren't shit doing it themselves.
Yeah, and what happened to James, the real deal Neal? Oh. There's a $6 million bust for you, too. They got their own version of Lucic there.
Yeah. How do you... And you know what? He was scratched for the final game.
Yeah. He got 0 points, and he was scratched.
For laughing at how bad Mike Smith was during the regular season, he is the only reason that they were, he was the only good player for them in the playoffs. He's the only guy who showed up. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I mean, and you think a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, for example, is just one of those guys that's just going to, every playoff, he's just going to bring it, right? He's going to be a force and unstoppable and just create havoc. But Zadorov and Johnson, those guys, they shut him down. He didn't do shit. I think he got 2 goals maybe in 5 games.
As much of a pain in the ass Brad Marchand is, at least he does something. I know that he started out as the pest, and now he's evolved into a very skilled player. I mean, he pulled an Evgeny Malkin by trying to spinorama backhand against the Blues last night. Yeah. But he can still get under your skin. He knows exactly what to do. He knows exactly when to do it. And he won't back down from a fight, even if the guy is bigger and stronger than him. Unlike little pussy Tkachuk, who turtles when Connor McDavid goes after him. Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. We could probably have a whole episode just on ripping the Flames.
Yeah.
Maybe have a few call-ins. Chase from Calgary. Hey guys.
Yeah, I remember listening to that podcast too. That was hilarious.
Yeah. Well, so at the end of the, I guess at the end of the day, you look at it. It was a disappointing season for sure for the Oilers. But the playoffs, because Toronto and Calgary bowed out in the first round, they really, in the end, they were really no further ahead.
No.
And we have a higher draft pick again going in. We got a new coach, new general manager, so new optimism.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Oilers still have holes. And Holland kind of addressed that. He wants to add more speed, and Tippett kind of talked about that as well. How they're going to need to make some roster changes and get some more depth on this team.
Yeah.
What I guess looking forward, and we'll touch on the draft in a bit, but I think looking forward, what do you foresee as maybe the most important piece or two that the Oilers need to bring in? Do you have anybody in mind that you would think would be a good fit, or somebody you'd like to Holland to kind of target in free agency or trade? What do you think the Oilers need, or who do you think they need to kind of step it up a little bit?
Well, that's a good question, because I first want to see what this Joakim Nygaard's going to do. And I think we forgot to touch on that little signing that happened, but
yes,
so we signed Swedish forward Joakim Nygaard from the I forget what league he plays in, but
I think isn't he Finnish?
So I don't remember. I know he's Swedish by nationality. I don't know which league he was playing in, but anyway, I saw a clip of this guy, speedy as lightning. So I probably would like to think he might get a couple looks with McDavid. The problem with McDavid, I make it sound like McDavid's a bad player. The problem with having McDavid on the team is that because of how we were built under Shirley, we didn't really have anyone who could relatively, play with McDavid because he was too fast for, guys like Lucic. We had to settle on Patrick Maroon, and Leon Draisaitl. And shout out to Patty in the cut with the Blues. I was so happy that he scored that double OT winner versus Dallas.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It was very nice to see him get that, and best of luck to him in the finals. He made a fan out of me in his first game as an Oiler. I remember he came in, he was a big guy, and he had to trim off a lot of weight, but that first game versus Philly, made a fan out of me instantly.
Yeah, I was just real quick there. I was he played here in London for a year. Oh, yeah, he was my dad's favorite player. Well, the Flyers drafted him.
Yep.
And my dad's a Flyers fan, and he loved Patty Maroon. But again, yeah, you can see he had the weight. But for a big guy, he had great hands, and teammates. Everybody seems to love him. Like he kind of has an infectious personality.
Yeah.
I definitely liked him as an Oiler as well. Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of that, so I'd like to see what they do with Nygaard. My biggest fear, as I said earlier with Tippett, is I feel like they're going to staple him to the fourth line, playing 8 minutes a night, like Hitchcock team seemed to do with Josh Curry and Joseph Gambardella.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see him get a couple of looks to McDavid, or with McDavid. In terms of free agency, though, obviously a lot of the big fish are off the market. We do not have the cap room to sign a free agent. However, going back to Toronto, they need to pay Mitch Marner, and they're going to need to pay him a lot of money.
Yeah, I was reading something today. They were talking about the Leafs. He's not going to sign with the Leafs before July 1st. Nope. He's going to wait till after. So that means somebody could back the truck up and offer sheet him, and then the Leafs would be in a real pickle, right?
And I know we don't have a lot of Leaf fans who are listening, so I know a lot of you guys probably don't care, but their first casualty is probably going to be William Nylander, because they also need to sign Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Johnsson. Those two prove that they can play in the top six. Those two prove that they can play with Austin Matthews. And those two proved that Toronto doesn't need William Nylander. They don't need him. They could have waited all season long to sign him, and it wouldn't have made a difference. That's how ineffective Nylander was, at least in my opinion.
If I'm their agents, Johnsson and Kapanen, I'm not signing before July 1st either.
No.
Because, if somebody doesn't want to throw all that money at Marner, they could throw money at Johnsson or Kapanen, a bit of an inflated contract. Obviously, nowhere near Marner's money. But they could offer a lot there, and then the Leafs are forced, well, we can't pay that much for this guy because we still need to sign Marner, right? So it'd be interesting to see if somebody, it's been so long, nobody ever gets offer sheeted.
No.
It'd be great to see an offer sheet finally in Toronto.
Yeah. I think the last time an offer sheet was accepted was when Dustin Penner came to Edmonton.
Shea Weber.
Oh, yeah, really?
Remember Shea? We have Philly offer sheeted Weber. Outrageous amount, and Nashville matched.
Yeah,
and
I meant like the last one that a team couldn't match was Penner. But yeah, ever since then, like I remember Ryan O'Reilly was offer sheeted, I think by Calgary, or was it by Colorado? Ryan O'Reilly was offer sheeted by someone, and then Buffalo or Colorado matched it, and then they traded his ass to Buffalo. That's
right. And remember the old Kevin Lowe offer sheeted Thomas Vanek, and Brian Burke fucking blew a gasket.
Yeah. Anytime the Oilers can make Burke mad, it's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Also, as a coincidence, as a compliment to Flames fans, notice how their team gets better as soon as Burke leaves. Just saying. But in terms of free agency, I'd like to... I don't know, to be honest, because I think our center depth is set. You got McDavid, Draisaitl, I think is going to try and drive his own line this year. And, I mean... Anyone who says that Draisaitl needs McDavid to be effective hasn't been watching Germany in the IHF tournaments. He was an absolute beast in that tournament.
Yeah.
You got Nugent Hopkins, I think, is going to play on the third line. And then the fourth line, I think we still got Brodziak under contract for another year, right?
Yeah, he's got another year, but I mean, what is he making? 1.75 or something?
Something cheap.
Yeah, and we got Colby Cave there. Would it not make more sense to just let Colby Cave be the fourth line center and get rid of Brodziak? Or
you know what? And that's a good point. I liked what I saw from Cave this year. Plus, you still got Sam Gagner who's the center, right, by default. So one of the things that I when I talk to different various fans, one of the things that they've always said about Edmonton is that their strength is their center depth. which I think is also their problem because they don't have enough wingers. But their strength is down the middle. So,
right.
And of course that also happens obviously a lot because of McDavid by himself. But you also got Draisaitl and Nuge. In terms of signing a free agent, obviously they do not have a lot of cap space. That being said, they have some expiring contracts, and I think who was that? It was not who was it? Toby Reeder. He's gone, but I mean, after what Nicholson said, I don't think he'd want to come back anyway.
Well, so what would you do on defense? Like, are you comfortable with a top 6 defense of Clefbaum, Larson, Nurse, Russell, Sekera, and Benning, or would you make moves there?
Well, I think based on what happened in Bakersfield, Bear, Jones, Harrison, and Bouchard are all going to be pushing. You got, I can't really pronounce his last name. The guy from Guelph, Dmitry Samarukov, I think. Is that how you say it?
Samarukov, yeah.
Samarukov. He had a great playoffs for Guelph, and I think he'll be pushing either for an NHL gig, or if not that, he'll absolutely be on, knocking on the door in Bakersfield there. You can't get rid of Sekera's contract. That's way too much for a team to take on unless you're planning on throwing in like Nuge or even the 8th overall pick for a team to get, to acquire. Although that being said, I wouldn't mind them trading the 8th overall pick. And we'll get to that when we talk about the draft. I don't know. I think one of Russell or Benning are gone. The problem is I like Chris Russell. I think I told you this on one of the other podcasts we did. I've never had an issue with him. People say that he blocks too many shots. You can never, ever, ever block too many shots. Especially when one of the shots you're blocking is an OV slapper from the left-hand dot on the power play. How can you criticize a guy from stopping an OV slap shot?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what people have issue with, and I'm a Chris Russell fan too. I like him within reason. I think I would like him so much better as like a $2 million third pair defenseman. When he's playing second pair, $4 million, then you kind of be like, eh.
The contract he signed before the 16-17 season, 1 year, 3.5, that was perfect for him. The 4x4 was, I think, a bit of an overpay by Chiarelli. I would have liked it to be like a 2x4 or a 2x2 or something like that. Not 4 years at $4 million. Something like maybe a 3x3 would have worked a little bit better. 4x4, you're asking for trouble, which, hey, surprise, surprise, we got. So I think either him or Benning are gone. And even then, I like Benning's game too. He's actually been. I know people dump on him a lot. And for good reason, but he's also been pretty good when he's not asked to play over his head. Like, if he's playing on the third pair, I think he's good. If he plays any higher than that or playing more minutes, then you're asking for trouble. So,
I
don't know. It's going to be interesting for the defensive side of the game because, like I said, we got so many guys knocking on the door, but you also have guys who are currently playing here now. Your top 6, I think, sticks. I don't know. We'll see where Nurse plays because he took a stride last year. I think Larson might be starting the season on the second pair. He didn't really have that great of a season last year, but that a lot of that has to do with the fact that Clefbaum got injured again, and Nurse was promoted. Like, I don't know, everything went so wrong last year. It's hard to pinpoint. It's hard to really fault one particular player for their failings of the season. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Let me jump in here for a second. So, I agree with you as far as the defense goes. I'm also, I think, like I said, between Russell and Benning, and I am a guy I am one that kind of jumps all over Benning. I mean, he's making $2 million. I really don't think he does anything really well. I think he just kind of holds the fort on the third pair and does his best. And he looks a lot better when he's with Sekera, who kind of masks some of his defensive inefficiencies or whatever. I think if you took him out of the picture and you just put Caleb Jones there, I think Caleb Jones gives you more offensive upside. I think he's a much better puck mover. He's a better skater. I think it just makes more sense to have Jones there. Benning's only got 1 year left anyways. Yeah. If you can move him, free up a couple mil there. And then I agree with you. Russell is probably not so much because he's, like we said, he's still not a capable defenseman. It's just he's making too much on the second pair, and he's not good. And this team, let's be honest, this team needs puck movers, right? And he, Nurse is not a great passer. He's more a carrier of the puck. And if he's with Russell, who's not a good puck mover, then, they really struggle. So I'd like to see, the real wild card for me is that Joel Persson from Sweden. I mean, he's 25. So it's not like he's a 19-year-old rookie kind of thing. He's got experience. He's a bit of a veteran. It'll be interesting to see what kind of impact he has. And he's a right-handed shot. I'd love to see him come in and just immediately jump to the second pair. And wow, what a steal this guy was. I'm so glad we signed him, right? That could kind of solidify that.
It's funny. I said Joel Persson. I was actually thinking of William Lagesson.
I kind of caught that. I was going to correct you, but I figured out whatever. And I want to correct myself too. Joakim Nygard is Swedish. He's not Finnish. Okay. So kind of did that fact check, I guess, while we were talking. But yeah, as far as the defense goes, I think we pretty much agreed. We want at least one, maybe two guys upgraded there, and there are a lot of options. Caleb Jones probably being the most likeliest in the farm, and then maybe, like we said, Persson or maybe Lagesson surprises. What about a net though? We've got Mikko Koskinen moving forward, and that's about it. Are you confident in Mikko Koskinen playing 60, 65 games this year and leading this team to the playoffs?
Okay, you know what? I remember last year I came on and I defended Cam Talbot.
Yeah, you're a big Talbot supporter. I remember that.
I still do. I still like him.
Mm-hmm.
I would love Edmonton to see if they can try and bring him back. It seems that he and Kelly like Edmonton. I don't know if they've left yet. I don't think they have. So I think they still have their property there. Mm-hmm. They got their two kids and stuff like that. The problem I had with Koskinen, and everyone I think had this issue, was when he signed his extension in January. Mm-hmm. A lot of that had to do with what the decision was going into that signing. I don't think a lot of it had to do with his numbers, but I don't know. Koskinen, it's no secret Koskinen outplayed Talbot. Even me, the bigger Talbot guy, could see that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's gonna be weird if he. I mean, the contract didn't warrant his numbers at the time. It didn't warrant his numbers before the season started. At least with Cam, when he signed his extension, the proof was in the pudding, right? It had. Yeah, sure, he was. He had a bad start to that season, but you could chalk that up to being the starter for the first time. And ever since mid-December of that that first campaign, he was a beast. He was one of the best goalies in the league. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see who they bring in as the backup. Clearly, the decision's been made. He's the starter. They're paying him to be their starter. But if this flops like it did a lot of times last season, especially with Koskinen in his glove hands, I mean, we're all just gonna go, what were you thinking? And well, not even that, because we're saying that now. But it's going to be interesting to see who they bring in as the backup. I've heard a lot of people saying that they're going to try and go after Mike Smith, which, I mean, I don't know how I feel about that, considering he was playing for, who down, last year. So,
there's nobody I hate more than Mike Smith. But you know what? If Mike Smith was on the Oilers and we beat Calgary, he kind of got back their old team. Oh, man, I don't know. That would be an interesting dynamic.
I don't know. The one problem I have with Mike Smith is that he'll make a mistake and then he'll blame it on his players. Like, I remember last year, game against Minnesota, Mike Smith goes behind the net to play the puck. The defender comes in, and then the Minnesota player goes in. And what is Mike Smith doing? He's just standing there. He stands there while there's this puck battle going, makes no attempt to get into the net. And then by the time he does, the puck is in the back of the net. And then he just glares at the Calgary defender. And I'm sitting there going, dude, you stood there doing nothing. Why are you looking at your defender? What is your problem with him, right? So he does have a bit of a temper, but, I mean, the age is also an issue, and the injuries.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. For me, time to put one of our rookies to good use. Stare it up here, because I think he was obviously the better goaltender between him and Skinner and Wells in Bakersfield.
Yeah.
I say give him a shot. Do it with the promise that he's going to get at least 15 games, because the problem that has plagued this team, especially with McClellan, they play their starters too much, and the backup rarely gets an opportunity. It's why Laurent Brossoit skipped town as quick as he could, and then he goes and is a star with the Winnipeg Jets.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that has to do with the goalie coach. Oh, yeah, and I forgot, our goalie coach is still hired, so that needs to be, or still employed, so that needs to be rectified immediately, please and thank you.
Yeah, my buddy, my old buddy Dirtbag, he's been banging that drum for a long time. Get rid of
Everyone's been banging that drum. It needs to happen. It's no secret why Devin Dubnyk and Laurent Brossoit become better goalies after they leave Edmonton.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think the Oilers, I would be okay if they just went ahead and said, you know what, our young goalies aren't quite ready yet. We're going to give them another year and sign a guy like Curtis McElhinney for 1 year, right? I mean, he played really well. Even in Toronto, he played well. I think he's got experience. He proved in the playoffs that he's still got some juice in there. And then if Koskinen does go down or whatever, at least you can, rely on McElhinney. He's not going to shit the bed, hopefully, right? He's at least going to be solid. So,
and again, I hate saying this, bringing him back to Toronto. That was one of the mistakes they made this year, keeping Sparks over him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you saw Sparks play, Jesus, what were they thinking?
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know.
Oh, my God. And then, of course, but I think McElhinney is going to stay in Carolina, especially with what they did.
And, I guess it depends. I mean, there's a lot of talk that they're going to let them. They might let them both go, and they might want to get a bona fide. Talk about Jonathan Quick getting traded or whatever. Somebody like that. They want a bona fide number one. They don't want to keep rotating.
Oh yeah,
but
the goalie market this year is going to be insane. Elliott, I think, is going to be on the market. Mike Smith is probably going to be on the market. Chad Johnson,
Bobrovsky.
Although I think he's going to Florida with Panarin.
Yeah, maybe.
It's probably going to happen. Talbot's going to be on the market, and that's why I said I think they should bring him back because, he wasn't really, he was bad, but I don't think it's, he wasn't bad enough that they don't want him back. And like I said, his family's still in Edmonton, I believe. So, I mean, there are options, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with letting Starrett, Wells, and Skinner kind of fester down there in the AHL. There's nothing wrong with that. And a big problem with this organization, especially with Yamamoto, especially with Puljujarvi, is looking at our young guys and going, hey, we think you're ready. Come on up.
Yeah.
Right? And then they lose their confidence. And speaking of free agency, do you think they re-sign Puljujarvi?
Oh, yeah. I think they will. I don't know what the plan is, whether they're just going to pencil him in. I think they have no choice, right? Because he's out of options. So he's either going to be on the team or they could lose him.
The issue is because of how they handled him. Yeah, they don't have an option. They can't send him down to Bakersfield without putting him through waivers first, and another team's going to claim him as soon as he becomes available, right? So
right.
They've backed themselves into a corner here. I think the only thing they really can do is send him to Europe somehow. I don't know if they can do that without him having to go through another NHL team or without another NHL team waiting to claim him. But I know his ELC ends this year. He hasn't lived up to expectations, and a lot of that has to do with because Edmonton just didn't this is why I don't. This is the problem I had with Ken Hitchcock this year. He says, I want to give our guys more of a chance. They send Puljujarvi down before Hitchcock is hired. He's hired. Puljujarvi comes up, and then he barely plays in a game. Barely. What the fuck?
Yeah.
This is why I could be a better coach or a GM. Because us, as not even me personally, but fans, because we get it. We understand it. We think about these things. And a lot of the decisions that they made, we just go, why? Why? Did you put any thought into this?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I would like to see him back. I don't think he's been given a fair shot. I think he has a lot of potential that he can still show off. But Edmonton has not helped him in the slightest. They have not given him a proper chance.
Right. I think it's going to work out, too. He's going to make the team. He's going to start in Edmonton. But if it doesn't go well, they're going to look to trade him. They won't send him down and lose him, obviously. No. They will trade him before that happens.
Yeah.
But I think realistically, and we'll kind of wrap this up and just get to the draft part, but I think if Edmonton can come out, let's just say in free agency, let's say they come out with, Curtis McElhinney as the backup goalie. And I would love, the one guy I'd love for them to pick up with the emphasis on speed. And I did want to point out too, Tippett kind of talked about how he might play Draisaitl and McDavid together a lot, which would make Nugent Hopkins a second line center, which means you need a third line center. But I would love to see the Oilers target Ryan Dzingel because he's got outstanding speed. and he didn't really do much in Columbus, and he kind of struggled in the playoffs, and apparently he was in Tortorella's doghouse, and he's a free agent. I would love to see him come in, and he can be kind of a second line left winger or a third line center, right? He has a little bit of flexibility. Yeah. He adds a lot of speed. You put him and Nygaard on there, all of a sudden your team's a lot faster. And, and he can pot some goals and that. And I think he would be a good addition as long as you don't overpay for him. 3 or 4 years and maybe $4 million max. I wouldn't want to go any higher than that. But if they could come away with one guy like that, they already got Nygaard. And then, like we said, move on from Russell and Benning. That frees up $6 million, and maybe you can get a guy like Colin Miller from Vegas to put on your second pair. Apparently, Vegas is looking to free up money, and he's a guy that's available. And Colin Miller actually played in the Sioux with Darnell Nurse, so there's a bit of chemistry there, familiarity. So, McElhenney, Colin Miller, and then you get you get a Dzingel, and maybe you make a trade for Connor Brown or somebody like that. I think that would be a pretty good offseason, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it would help our team get better, at least on paper. And of course, we all know paper doesn't exactly translate into NHL success. Look at the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But obviously, they haven't helped themselves by putting themselves against the wall in the cap. But I guess.
I gotta ask you, because I know you've always been a big Lucic fan. Do you think they should move Lucic, and do you think they'll be able to? Is he gone? Is he an Oiler come the first opening night? Yes or no?
I don't know if they can move him without waiting, unless they plan on throwing in the 8th overall pick, which, in all honesty, I wouldn't mind. Mm-hmm. I don't think they need it right now. They got enough talent down there in Bakersfield to kind of survive without it.
Right.
I don't know if they can, to be honest. And I know that last year during the offseason, you guys were talking about moving him down to Arizona because ultimately it would make sense for everyone involved. But I don't know if you can. As much as I didn't mind Shirley when he first got here, that deal has really hurt us. Yeah. And I know Lucic, I like the guy, I like what he brings, but you can't deny that the points just haven't been coming for him, and it's not warranting where he's playing in the lineup and how much he's making.
And he's fallen off a cliff. He just took an absolute nosedive.
It felt like, yeah, exactly. It's like he jumped out of a plane and never pulled his parachute. You know what I mean? He scored 50 points in the playoff year, and then just nothing. What happened? It's usually there's a gradual decline with players. This guy just drove off a cliff.
He went from 23 goals to 10, and then the next year down to 6.
Although I found it funny how he's the first guy to score he was the guy to score the Oilers' first goal of the season.
Then he didn't score the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly. It was amazing how that happens. Who was he playing with in 16? He was playing with Nugent Hopkins and Eberle, right, in the playoff year, and then he got kind of promoted to playing with Draisaitl, which worked because both of those guys were kind of big players. I don't know. I really have no idea what happened.
Yeah, the playoffs, it ended up Pouliot, Hopkins. That playoff year, it was Pouliot, Hopkins, and Eberle. Yeah, exactly. They all got demoted to the third line, and Luch was... Yeah. I think Luch was playing. Yeah, he was playing with Slepyshev and Draisaitl.
Yeah, he was playing with Slepyshev and Draisaitl, and then McDavid was playing with Maroon and Kajula, I think.
Yeah.
Does Brandon Manning come off the books this year? That's another guy.
No, he does not. They're going to have to bury him, and they'll save $1 million by burying him, but they still take another 1.25 hit. So, Ken Holland's got some work to do for sure. It'd be nice if he could. I think it's possible to move Lucic. I know that he was on a radio station there in Vancouver, and apparently there are rumors that Vancouver they were actually considering talking a trade Eriksson for Lucic, which doesn't necessarily make sense, but at least it means they're open to taking him on or bringing him on in some capacity. I think if there is a way to do it, the best way to do it is, you obviously get him to waive his no move clause, and you talk about a 3-way deal, and you use a team like Ottawa, who's just not even close to the cap floor. Oh, yeah. You trade him to Ottawa first with, you prearrange that he's going somewhere else, and you get them to eat a couple million or whatever, give him a sweetener, and they eat some of his salary, and then they ship him off to a third team. and a third team gets Luch at a much reduced salary. That's about the only way I can see that happening.
I can see him going to Vancouver, considering Vancouver was willing to pay him more than what we are currently paying him.
Mm-hmm.
That was coming out of Vancouver when he was a free agent. So, Holland's got work to do. I'm still mad at that Manning trade. I was mad at it when it was announced. It never made sense, ever. At least with Petrovic, I could sort of back it. I can find some defense. Brandon Manning, I couldn't find a defense for, and I was pissed right off.
Yeah.
That move, those two trades absolutely showed that Peter Chiarelli was desperate to save his job. And look what it did. It didn't help him, and he made us worse. Yeah, and he couldn't even make the AHL squad. That's how pathetic that. I don't blame him for injuring McDavid. That is one of the few things that I defend him for, because it really wasn't his fault. Regular hockey play, and if you want to dispute that, look what happened to Taylor Hall when he played Philadelphia in Maroon's first game. Basically the exact same play. The difference was Hall was older and he was able to absorb it. Mm-hmm. But I just can't for the life of me ever find a defense for that trade. Yeah. It makes no sense. In what world, in what sane, sensible world does that make any sense? Chicago was desperate to get rid of him, and Peter Chiarelli calls and they're like, hey, let's fleece this guy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
and get rid of Drake Kajula for it? One of the few guys who was actually producing at that time? Okay, anyway, I don't want to talk about this because I'm going to get mad. So let's talk about the draft, I guess.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about our last segment here. We got about 5-10 minutes. Yeah, we'll talk about that. With the draft coming up, like we said, the Oilers have got a lot of draft prospects coming here. We got a lot of defensemen, in particular, Evan Bouchard and Dmitry Samorukov, who looked outstanding in the playoffs and the Memorial Cup. We have the 8th overall pick. I know you mentioned you've kind of been following the draft a little bit, but not so much in past years. Do you have like a certain position? Forward's got to be kind of the number one position, you'd think, right?
Yeah. I think, one of the few things I will credit Peter Chiarelli for, beyond being the GM that was in power when we broke the playoff curse, he improved our drafting. Drafting has absolutely improved, and he improved it in the areas that it needed to. Defense and goaltending. Drafting a defenseman is redundant at this point. I don't think we need to draft a defenseman for another few years, or at least not like a high priority defenseman. Mm-hmm. You can still get like a depth, puck mover or a third or fourth guy, but you do not need you don't need like another Caleb Jones or another Ethan Bear or those guys, right?
Yeah.
As I've already said, I wouldn't mind. I would have no problems with them trading the 8th overall pick, especially if it gets us like a top 6 winger or something like that, or even as a sweetener. Well, actually, if you're going to trade the 8th overall pick, it better be a top 6 forward coming back.
Yeah,
I do not want to throw it in as a sweetener for Lucic to get rid of that contract. I don't want that, because that means we're not getting anything valuable in return.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That being said, if they decide to keep it, which I think they will, they got options. I would like to see potentially I want to see a winger. Enough with the centerman bullcrap. Enough with the defenseman. Enough with the goalies. Get a winger.
Yeah.
And then staple him in the AHL and never call him up until you absolutely think he's ready. I do not want to see a Kyler Yamamoto. I do not want to see a Jesse Puljujärvi repeat. And I know Yamamoto looked better last year at the start of the season, but he's not yet ready. He needs to stay down in Bakersfield. This is the beautiful thing about having actual prospects. You don't need to force feed them NHL minutes anymore.
Exactly.
We don't need to do that. We have a team that won 17 straight games. Tied an AHL record for the second longest streak in AHL history for winning games or something like that. You don't need to rush them anymore. We can let them
develop.
And this is where I am taking them to the bank. They said they're going to overripen the prospects. Let's see if they stick to their word. Because I'm pissed off at them for lying about the hiring process, about saying, we're going to do our due diligence, and then hiring the first guy that becomes available. As soon as he becomes available, they said they're going to over-ripen the prospects. I think they're going to do that with Holland, but they need to start showing us that they are actually willing to do what they say they are.
Yeah, that would be nice. Draft and develop. That's the key, right?
I'm getting mad here. So
yeah. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. I agree with you. Let's go for a winger. And I mean, Dylan Cousins, if he were to fall to the Oilers, I mean, technically he's a center. I view him as a winger, at least to start. He kind of reminds me a lot of Ryan Smith, actually, back in the day. I see a lot of the similar traits. He's kind of a real fast guy. He's got outstanding speed, and he can score. Send him back to the WHL and let him dominate there, and then send him down to the AHL for a year or two as well. And like you said, draft and develop. That's kind of the key. I told people, and I'm sure you remember this, but I told people last year, and I think even before that, people were saying the cupboard was bare. I'm like, you guys are nuts. I said, there's so many prospects coming. I'm telling you, the Oilers got these guys coming. Just be patient, right? Well, now we're starting to see that. And like you said, Bakersfield's dominating, and they're going to be even better next year if they have Bouchard and Samorukov on defense. And Maximoff and McLeod are there. And, God, they're going to be ridiculous. So, it's it'll be interesting to see. The draft is only, it's only, 3 weeks away now. Just over 3 weeks away, which is crazy.
Yes.
But hopefully we can get somebody like that, and like you said, fill a few holes in free agency and maybe make a couple of trades. And you never know. It's renewed optimism again in Oilers Nation.
Yeah, well, I'm still cautiously optimistic because outside of 1 year, the past 12 years have been all filled with optimism, only for that to be shattered by the end of December. Yeah, well, hopefully. The way I see this, if we're in a playoff spot in December, and I remember even at the beginning of the year, we went 0-2, then we went 8-2-1. Mm-hmm. We were first place in the West at one point, and then everything just kind of fell off a cliff after that. If we're in a playoff spot by December, if we can kind of maintain that, I think, what was the plan? They said, because I was asleep during the Ken Holland press conference, he said that the goal was to make the playoffs in next season, right? Yeah, that was the goal. Yeah, so if he can do that, if things can fall the way we hope they will, okay, they might suck me back in again. And I've always said this: cheering for the Oilers is like being addicted to a drug. You know it's not good for you. You know you need to stop, but you can't. You try everything to go away, and then they suck you back in with something. So I'm remaining cautiously optimistic. As I said at the beginning of this podcast, I really haven't been paying attention because at this point, I don't want to get too attached to only to get my hopes up. Yeah. But the more I think about it, the more we've talked about it, I've kind of slowly gotten used to the idea. And who knows, they might pull something out of their ass next year, and I will not be. And if it's a good thing, I will not be upset. Yeah, well, I'm with you. I'm always going to take the side of being at least cautiously optimistic. There's no fun in just being negative Nancy the entire time, anyways, right? It's just sports. It's not life or death. Although no matter how passionate we get into it, it's better to be optimistic and hope for the best, right? Yeah. So, all right. Well, we'll leave it at that. We'll kind of have an abbreviated version. We're going to be doing. I think Mike's going to have a draft podcast. Last year we did a live draft, and I was actually screaming, "Take Dobson, take Dobson!" live on the podcast. So I can't really go back on that. But we might do something similar again this year. So everybody listening, if you want to tune into that, that'd be great. And I guess before we go, do you have any other final thoughts or parting shots there, Alex? Calgary sucks. Yes. We got destroyed by the Avalanche. Shut your damn mouths. Yeah, and how bad is that Hamonic for Dobson trade going to look in a couple of years? People are going to look back and say, what? Oh, you guys were nuts. You didn't even make the playoffs with Hamonic 2 years ago. And then this year you go out in the first round. Like, he's so overrated. My God. Draisaitl's better than Bennett. Yeah. And Mitch Marner's going to get $14 million. Yeah. That would be 12 at least. It's got to start with 12. If I'm his agent, it's starting with 12. The season he had? Yeah. Starts with 12. Yeah, and I ask a lot of Leaf fans, I say, who would you have right now? Tell me the truth. Who would you rather have? You could have one. Who's more valuable? Who would you rather have? Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner? And I tell you, the majority of fans say Mitch Marner. So if that's the case, and Matthews is getting, $11 million, you gotta go higher. Right? I still don't get that contract. Yeah, well, he's making what, $1 million, 1 to 1.5 less than McDavid.
I know.
That for what he shells out.
I know. Well, there's
how many games has McDavid missed with injury, and how many has Matthews? How many are Ross's?
Well, we were told Dubas is a
he's
genius.
A star player.
We were told Dubas is a genius, so we got to trust him, trust the process, right?
Yeah, well, he has his work cut out for him. Let's see him do things now. Let's see how much of a genius he really is right now. This offseason, he's got a chance to prove it.
This will be the real test.
Yep.
All right.
No more Daddy Lamorello holding his hand.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Alex. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for
absolutely.
Thanks for everyone listening. Again, this is the Heavy Hockey Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we'll talk to you all again soon. Have a great night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live.